So how can, digital interventions really make Salience easier for people and more effective for users?
Salience is availability and accessibility. You need both. In startups, with the perspective I've gotten is, the reward is whether you can stay alive. It's money. There's overlap because we focus on combination of misconceptions and then also what people are feeling and seeing. And from a public health perspective, the war on drugs was an epic failure. Criminalizing and throwing people in jail, epic failure.
We spoke about as well how you struggled with substances yourself. And so how has your own personal recovery journey influenced the approach that you use to designing interventions for others? Welcome to the K in Clarity podcast. I'm the host, Mazwe. During this episode, we're joined by Fred Muench, founder and CEO of Clear30, and a clinical psychologist specializing in behavioral health innovation. Fred Muench has been instrumental in developing digital health interventions and scalable addiction support solutions within the behavioral health and substance use space. He has led the creation of impactful tech-enabled programs like Clear30, a digital cannabis intervention currently being studied in partnership with Harvard University, and has co-founded initiatives such as Vegas Labs, which focus on passive mental health support through technology. Muench's expertise and long-standing leadership include serving as president of the Partnership to End Addiction and as an associate professor at the Feinstein Institute for Medical Research. Over his career, he has launched and sold multiple digital health companies, received grants from organizations such as the NIDA, NIAAA, RWJF, and Google, and published nearly 100 scientific papers and book chapters. Muench's innovative approaches, spanning digital interventions, peer support services, and low-barrier access models, continue to drive significant improvements in mental health and addiction care, enabling more people to access effective, evidence-based support. In this conversation, we discuss his extensive experience in digital mental health and substance use. He shares his insights on the challenges of scaling mental health interventions, the importance of salience in digital health, and the unique engagement strategies for young adults regarding cannabis use. Fred also reflects on his personal recovery journey and how it shapes his approach to helping others. Lastly, he emphasizes the need for a balance between mission-driven work and commercial viability in the health tech space, while also addressing misconceptions about cannabis use and the importance of understanding user engagement. If this is your first time tuning in, here's the gist. The healthcare industry is buzzing with innovations, but there's a lot of noise and misconceptions out there. That's where we come in. Because of my experience in the healthcare ecosystem, I've gained a unique vantage point into the industry's inner workings. We're bringing the conversations that typically happen behind boardrooms and strategy sessions, the real challenges, innovative solutions, and game-changing insights that are reshaping healthcare as we know it. On this podcast, we're bringing you face-to-face with the industry-leading healthcare founders, executives, and innovators. We're talking about the nitty-gritty of building and scaling healthcare companies, the hurdles they've overcome, and the strategies that have led to their success. More importantly, we dive into the personal challenges that come with trying to change a system as complex as U.S. healthcare. So whether you're a healthcare entrepreneur, a medical professional, or just someone passionate about the future of healthcare, this podcast is your backstage pass to the minds shaping the industry. Now let's have Fred tell us a little bit about themselves. Hi, Fred. Welcome to the K in Clarity podcast. For the people listening, can you give a brief overview of who you are and what it is you do?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. I've enjoyed the episodes I've listened to and appreciate all you're doing. My name is Fred Muench. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I've been in the digital mental health and substance use space for about 20 years now, primarily straddling academia, the nonprofit, and the entrepreneurial / startup worlds. Right now, I am the CEO of Clear30, which is a app and program to help people take a break from cannabis and then decide whether they want to moderate or abstain after. And we guide them through a number of different programs and features, which I'm sure we'll get into. I'm also an associate professor at Feinstein Institute for Medical Research, where I work with Northwell Health on building out some of their AI tools for clinicians and for individuals in treatment. And then lastly, I also work with a company called Vegas Labs and we're focused on training the autonomic nervous system into balance using vibration, light, and electrical stimulation. So those are my high level projects that I'm working on, but my real focus is on Clear 30. And then also some of the work I do in academia.
Amazing. Well, as you know, from watching previous episodes, we like to do an icebreaker question. And so my question for you is, if you could design a digital tool or app to instantly boost motivation and salience for someone trying to change a particular health behavior, what would be its most important feature and why?
Wow. So it instantly boosts motivation. I would say, so when you think about salience is availability and accessibility. And if it boosts that and it makes someone aware of their behavior change, there's a lot of opportunity across the board in terms of personalization, in terms of getting it in front of them. But if it's automatically doing it, I would say timing is one of the most important things we can do. So if you're a surgeon and you're in surgery and you're getting a motivational tip to eat healthy, well, that's not going to help you very much. And I think the beauty of digital health, particularly within mobile and wearables, is timing matters. And then when you look at timing times salience, that's when you have the perfect mix of mechanisms that drive behavior change.
Going into, your career, you've spent a lot of time in academic research, startup innovation, and as well as nonprofit leadership. And so really with this blend of experiences and really all the mixes that you've had, how has that really shaped the way you approach digital health and mental health interventions as they come across?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't know if it says more about my temperament and temperamental flaws, but I do think it does give me perspective. And it gives me perspective of how different organizations approach products. Because in all these situations, I've been working in the digital health space. And specifically, if you think about each of those, you look at what's rewarding, with money type thing, and then what's the culture. And then how do you take the strengths of each and then avoid the weaknesses / barriers to getting things done? I think in the academic setting, it's so focused on like mechanisms of change and outcome, and it's rigorous research where we're not so focused on implementation and outcomes. And I think that's changed over the last 20 years. But when you have to give someone a consent form before you're testing their product or a service, it really changes things. And so I think that's a real downside. The upside is it's so focused on understanding outcomes. It's focused on understanding what are the best ingredients of interventions, regardless of whether your onboarding is working or not at that moment. In startups, with the perspective I've gotten is the reward is whether you can stay alive. It's money. And in all these situations, it's money, but particularly you have to have a product that people are going to use. That early engagement is so important in startups. And if you have an ongoing app that they're using, that longer term engagement is important. And one of the things I've learned that in startups beyond everybody else is that rapid agility, flexibility, and ability to change on the drop of a dime when you're seeing something not working to change. When you're doing a research study to change something, you're confounding the study. So in startups, you can do rapid iterative A/B testing over and over, and it's fast and it's fun. It's also really uncertain. And so there's a lot of uncertainty that you have to deal with in a good way. And then in the nonprofit space, I think nonprofits are so mission focused that sometimes they get conservative. You don't want to break the brand of a nonprofit. A nonprofit is about brand. It's about bigger. It's about making a difference. There's a lot of conservative people in nonprofits. And when I say conservative, I mean scared to make a change. So if I think about all of them, it's figuring out a way to take the strengths of each. So for a startup, we really focus on outcome research. We do a lot of A/B testing. We're working with the Recovery Research Institute at Harvard. We're working with the University of Michigan to do research for us. So we have a partner that's doing it for us so we can learn as we're going, but we don't have to focus on it so much. We're doing all this A/B testing. So mission driven. Part of what we started as a nonprofit, actually, and then we shifted to a for-profit because mission is so important to us. based on my history, but also based on what I've seen in the nonprofit space.
I know when we spoke, you've talked about how hard it is to scale meaningful mental health care, especially to those that are most marginalized. I guess, what are the most persistent barriers to scalability, as kind of you just mentioned, and how can digital tools actually begin to address some of them?
Yeah, luckily inherent in the digital tool and digital space is accessibility, right? Like that's what digital is. It's in your phone. There's affordability of access. Everyone has a mobile phone. The biggest digital divide right now is age. So, and which is important. And we just actually did a paper on text messaging for older adults to reduce a problem drinking. But really what we're seeing in terms of engagement now moves to, one, can you get in front of someone? Social media has changed all that too, that you can really reach people. Most people are on social media, but if not, there's also other outlets to get to people. Really, with marginalized populations, particularly people who are trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from, how to get their rent paid, how to get childcare, how to get healthcare, the gas tank is low. A lot of people don't have time to engage in mental health wellness interventions. And in our instance, drug use is easy. It's cheap. It gives you an immediate reward. Cannabis use doesn't have those like serious consequences in the short term as other substances. So you're sort of fighting this. So building salience and making it easy for people to engage in the intervention is one of the most important things I think we've learned over time. When people have all of these other priorities in their life that are super important, how do you make it easy for someone to engage in the behavior change process and engage them over time at their own speed?
I guess, why do you believe digital interventions can uniquely reinforce behavioral change and actually help people create those meaningful impacts in their lives compared to, what people would describe as traditional methods?
Yeah. Traditional methods, you have to have, it's a luxury to go to a 30-day rehab. I went to a 10-day Vipassana, right? Not everybody can do that where I did silent meditation. These kind of interventions require time, effort, at times to take a break from the world. And I think digital offers the opportunity for low effort engagement, but continuously over time. And you're able to go on your phone for 3 minutes to start to shift some thought you might be having, to start to do a deep dive without requiring all the effort. You can do it in bed, right? You can do it when you're online for the bar or when you're thinking about smoking. There's this opportunity to engage individuals that traditional doesn't have, that 24/7 continuous access that someone has. And I think the important part is it's continuous. These are little breadcrumbs and you just drip, drip, drip. And then maybe someone will make the change and they'll say, you know what, I need more treatment. Or maybe someone will slowly make the change over time because it's these little drips and then something shifts in them. Or someone will decide, this isn't for me. So that the continuity of the therapeutic engagement is something that only digital can do, particularly on the phone or in a wearable.
I know when we spoke, you had a key focus on the concept of salience, which I think was really interesting, and making important health messages actually stand out regardless of whatever medium it comes through. And so how can digital interventions really make salience easier for people and more effective for users?
Yeah, so salience is availability and accessibility. You need both to make something salient. So it needs to be either available in your head and accessible to you. And so memory is a good example. Oh, there is a memory in there somewhere, but I can't access it. I can't remember. You need both. Something in your life, I need running sneakers and it's available and I can use them, whatever it might. So salience is about availability and accessibility. And there's different kinds of salience. So there's cognitive salience about a thought. There's emotional salience in terms of how powerful something is. There's environmental salience if you have bongs all around you. And there's social salience, the people in your life. And digital interventions, we can focus on a lot of them. So using Clear 30 as an example, we start with salience and social media feeds. We really focus on our social channels. We're engaging young people. And unlike most behavior change companies, social is one of our areas of focus. We put a lot of time into social. Lead Asher Herbstman is building essentially an intervention on social, because we want to make it salient in people's lives and we want to reach as many people as possible. And then when someone gets into the app, we want to make it salient by delivering different mediums, videos, carousels, meditations, text, YouTube. Then we go into YouTube, we go to Reddit. We have an AI bot. So we want to make the message for the day. So let's say the day is withdrawal. We want to create salience by attacking it on multiple mediums. So people who engage in one behavior, some people love the meditations and that's all they're going to do. So we make it salient because we're personalizing it to them. Other people love the videos. So they focus on the videos. So it's really thinking about what we can do. And then the wrapper around that is we have push alerts. We have widgets that you could leave on your phone. We have text messaging. We have groups where someone can ping you if you don't check in for the day. So we look at salience as our driving force, salience times effort. My colleague, Amit Bowlaw, and I wrote a paper on effort optimized interventions, which is focusing on salience, effort, and making meaning. And that's what drives what we do at Clear 30.
I guess, where do you see the integration of AI, taking digital mental health in the coming years, and what excites you most? And, also what worries you about, this upcoming shift?
Yeah. So, first is that, it's completely transformed everything and will continue to transform everything. A couple of years ago, even in Clear 30, we were building logic branching, decision support, which we still use and help train our models. But now you can create contextual information. So in Clear 30, what we've done is we take your initial assessment, we take your check-in data, we look at what symptoms you're clicking on, we look at the videos you're clicking on. We're taking all of that information to provide a personalized experience day by day. So on your craving day, when you get a message, it's taking into account a lot of information. If you engage with the bot, it's taking account a lot of information. So it's going to completely change what we're doing. And Northwell, we're using it for diagnostics. We're using it for provider-patient matching. It's changing everything. And that's a wonderful thing because the goal of AI, or what it's great at, is pattern recognition, right? So in healthcare, it's like a no-brainer. Having said all that, there are some downsides, as we know. Well, the environment is obviously one of them. But in healthcare, is creating these contextual conversations. It's hyper personalizing at a level you couldn't imagine. Now you're going to be like lying in bed, being able to talk to some bot that knows kind of everything about you and is able to offer suggestions if trained the right way. However, at the same time, especially for the most disconnected people, those people can rely on it. And we're seeing this already, that people are talking to bots as if they were friends. A bot is a Sherpa, or should be a Sherpa, not a friend. And then those people can get more and more lost in the digital world, whether it's Wally or whatever you might want to call it. People can get more and more lost. And this is a real fear. And unless people are getting connected to in-person support and connection, it's going to be a dark time as much as we're personalizing care. So I think focusing on making sure we don't fall into this trap more so than even personalizing care is one of the most important things we do. And at Clear 30, we focus on group engagement in the app, in groups and community, but we also focus on trying to make sure people are connected to local resources as well.
Your work is, I think, uniquely positioned in addressing cannabis use, especially, among young adults. And so why do you think this conversation is often, missing or ignored in public health? And I guess, what have you really learned about engaging this population through your work?
Yeah. So, thinking of this, as a two-part question, right? Like what's missing in public health and then engaging people. There's overlap because we focus on, combination of misconceptions and then also what people are feeling and seeing. And from a public health perspective, the war on drugs was an epic failure. Criminalizing and throwing people in jail, epic failure. Decriminalization is one of the most important things we could have done. But unfortunately, it was coupled with commercialization. And when just like follow the money in terms of startup or academic or whatever it might be, the same is true here. And there's people who want to make money. So from a public health perspective, I think we've allowed the conversation, which was a criminal justice issue to become a panacea. Cannabis is a panacea. And we've allowed marketing of false medical claims to drive behavior because it's fun to get high, right? It's fun to smoke weed. And people are saying like, oh man, this is awesome. It helps me treat chronic pain and works on my, chronic anxiety and depression. Well, there's never been a randomized controlled trial ever to show that cannabis treats a mental health condition. Yes, it helps reduce REM sleep and nightmares and PTSD because it reduces REM sleep. So it's one symptom. So does alcohol. It's very similar to the red wine paradox. Once this article came out on like red wine is good for you, alcohol sales went through the roof. People want something that they can get drunk or high on this is great. So I think from a public health perspective, we've done a really bad job of showing people what the actual research is. And the actual research is, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but like, cannabis use is correlated, and the level of cannabis use and the potency of cannabis use. So there's a dose effect with increased psychosis, like 5 times increased depression, dose effect, increased suicidal behavior. One of the studies done showed that with people without depression, increases suicidal behavior compared to people without depression who did commit suicide as well by a large amount. There's something going on with problem solving and how people are thinking that we're just not talking about it. Now, in terms of engaging young people, the first thing is we don't villainize weed. If people want to smoke weed, that's great. Smoking weed. I mean, there's a reason people do drugs. We're not anti-weed. What we are is pro-attention. And so what we want to do is make sure that people who want to get support are getting empirically validated information and support. We're not selling them something that's not real. We focus on the research, and I encourage everybody to do their own research. We do this in the app too. So engaging young people is just being authentic and honest with them. And one of the things that the research is showing is that the majority of people who use cannabis daily don't go to treatment or don't want treatment. Okay, so only 10% go to formal treatment. But of those, there's a large percentage, over 50% in some studies, up to 70%, who want to do something. So what we're doing is we're chatting with those people who they might say to their friend, man, I feel like I can't stop smoking weed. And their friend's like, stop it. Just stop. Weed's not addictive. And we're there for them to show them what that means. So we're trying to have authentic conversations with real data, with real user stories to engage young people in the conversation. So that was a long answer, but I think you get the gist of how we're trying to meet people where they are and engage them in the process.
Yeah, speaking about, research, I think one thing I also saw is that, as the years have gone on, the dosage effect of cannabis is increased, which who knows what the risks to that are. And I know you've also cited, compelling research linking early and frequent cannabis use to some serious health effects and risks. So I guess, what do you believe are the most misunderstood facts about cannabis, especially for the youth and young adults?
Yeah. So based on what we're chatting, it's like some of the similarly, right? Like that it's this panacea, that there's no effects. And I think if we really start to look at what's happening with weed, right, in terms of the misconceptions, the first thing is that for the first time in history, daily cannabis use surpassed daily alcohol use, right? So there's 17 million people in the US who smoke it. Overwhelmingly, it's young adults, so the main group. And that thinking that smoking weed every day is okay, that people can get tricked into thinking it's okay because the consequences are often stealth. When you go out and you get hammered one night, you're like, oh my God, right? It just does not feel good. Yet smoking weed, you don't really see these changes. Yet there's subtle mental health changes that happen over time. I mentioned those studies, right? I mentioned the studies that people should be aware of. You mentioned potency. Potency is essential. If we're looking at it, it's 15 times stronger, depending, and sometimes 80 times stronger if you're looking at a dab or something else. Where cannabis it's not the same drug as it was in 1970. I did a webinar for musicians. And I'm like, Bob Dylan smoked a different drug than you are. It is entirely different. And this is manufactured. And the reason why daily cannabis use has increased the way it has is not only because of the cultural zeitgeist, but also because higher potency weed is associated with more dependence and more daily use. So I would say, really diving into the research, and don't believe that cannabis is this panacea that is going to just fix everything. It's still a drug, just like alcohol.
I think one thing that you touched upon as well in your guys' Clear 30 model is an approach that's non-judgmental, one that's focused on harm reduction and actually helps, people over their agency, over their decisions. And so how did you really think through and develop this model? And I guess what have you learned from interacting with different participants about, what really drives change?
Yeah. So meeting people exactly where they are. So individual therapy, that is the model. Motivational interviewing, harm reduction is coming at it not judgmentally, which is we don't judge people for drinking coffee. We don't judge people for doing lots of things. And to judge someone for using a substance or to create some moral dilemma for an individual is not how we approach it, which is we focus entirely on intention. What is your intention? If your intention is to smoke every day and that's what you want to do, that's fine. What we might do is to discuss what happens when you smoke every day based on the science, but that's fine. That's your goal. So we meet people where they are, and the goal is to give them agency. But within that agency of what they're doing, we also want to guide them on a journey. And this is one of the things that at Clear 30, when we talk about non-judgmental, we also don't want to just be like, oh, everything's good, everything's great. They're coming to us for a reason because they want some guidance. So we make sure to never judge anyone. If you want to use, weed enemas or whatever, that's great. People like to get high. People have been getting high forever. That's great. What's your intention? What's your goal? Do you understand what's happening to you? So let us walk you through 30 days plus 90, 180, 360. We have long-term programs, and have that conversation. Let's have a real, authentic conversation. Are there blind spots that you're having? One of the things we do with people is say, ask your closest friends what they think. Don't get stuck in your head. Don't believe us, but ask your closest friends. Ask people who smoke, ask people who don't smoke, and ask people who smoke maybe, once a month, to really get feedback and have an authentic conversation. And what that does is then people start opening up to us and we have real conversations. Half the people who come into Clear 30 want to moderate and continue to use after 30 days. Half the people want to stop. So what we do, and usually what people say is they're coming in and they're saying they want to stop or they want to moderate. They usually kind of stick with it. They know it. So we work with them exactly where they are.
I think to connect a lot of your work towards your early journey, we spoke about as well how you struggled with substances yourself. And so how has your own personal recovery journey influenced the approach that you use to designing interventions for others?
Yeah, I think the main thing when you've been through, so I struggled with heroin addiction. I consider myself in recovery, but a non-traditional recovery. I didn't do any substances whatsoever for 8 years. That's not the case now, but I'm very aware of my addiction potential with everything. And the one thing I know is change is hard. This is not easy. We've been taking an easy path to get some sort of contentment with drugs. Now, in the beginning, it was all sensation seeking. It was fun. It was creating new experience, all this. And then at some point it shifts. When you're using daily and you try to stop and you can't, something is different. So you're relying on this substance. And then when you try to change, everything's stripped away. And so how it's informed Clear 30 is just really focusing on that change is hard and that deep acceptance that change is hard and deep acceptance that you're not where you want to be is okay. And it's the place to start. There's no rules too. If after 5 days you smoke again, okay, so is that something you wanted to do, you didn't want to do? So really working with an individual to meet them where they are and hold their hand on the journey and never let go. right? And this is the beauty of digital. So on day 187, we're still going to be holding your hand and exploring with you on this journey as you're approaching new goals, old goals, whatever you might be doing. The other thing that is, I mentioned this about groups and Salience and others. It's really hard to change on your own. It's really hard, even if you have some guidance. And so connecting with other people, that's why we have groups in Clear 30. We have community. Reddit is amazing. There's so much on Reddit, is to really reinforce social support during the process as well. So, I mean, I guess that's it, but, actually there's one other thing, which is really helping users understand why they use and looking at relief and coping versus contentment and satisfaction. Early on in use, it's usually contentment and satisfaction. You're just trying to have a good time, right? And that shifts. And helping people explore that within themselves, I think my own journey has really helped me pass that along to others. And I guess the last thing I'll say is it's never over. I meditate. I go on Vipassana meditation. Like I do, like it's never over. My brain is different and I have to be vigilant. And for many people, that's complete abstinence. For me, that's not, but you still have to be vigilant because I know where my mind goes.
Can you dive a little bit deeper into, how you've changed as well, just for the audience to understand?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so my journey was, I started using substances very early, started smoking weed very early, drinking, elevated to cocaine in high school. I started using heroin in college and it took me down. I mean, heroin was the thing that really took me down. I mean, and I smoked a lot in college. I drank a lot as well. But that was more part of the social scene. The smoking and was more alone. And then the heroin really was part of a group. I was in a band and we lived at the East Village. It was the early 90s. And it really took me down. And what saved me, bar none, is 12 steps. AA and NA saved me. I fought it. I just started going to meetings every day, 3 meetings a day, because I didn't know what to do with myself. I went to multiple treatments, depended on whether I had insurance or not. But it was really about saying to myself, I give up in terms of trying to figure this out. I accept where I am. And the most important thing is there's nothing more important than my recovery and my focusing on myself. And what that has done, even though I will have a drink, and even I had mentioned this on another podcast, like during the pandemic, I was like, wait, I was drinking, I was drinking more. And I was like, stop, and my wife and I had a conversation. I was very open about like, whoa. But that just got to keep working on yourself. I meditate every day. I'll do a Vipassana meditation. 2 weeks ago, I went on a weekend-long meditation retreat. I exercise, try to better myself. And I'm not someone who does that naturally. Like I want the easy answer, but I force myself to do it. And that's what I think recovery and change from substances help me do, which is if you don't make something a priority, it's not happening. It is not happening. So single-minded focus on something until it could become part of your routine.
Well, thank you for, sharing your journey. That's a lot, especially to deal with and actually be honest with yourself about. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I know as well to go on further, you've combined your work at Columbia, Mount Sinai, startups and nonprofits. And so my question there is, why is it so difficult to turn academic research or nonprofit ideas into commercially successful and scalable digital products, especially maybe in today's world?
Yeah. It's always, there's money, culture, and I guess there's a few things. The first is that academic and nonprofit systems are not set up to build startups. They don't have the infrastructure to do it. And then even when the ones that do have infrastructures to do it, most of them are not really focused on digital health. They might be focused on pharmaceuticals or medical devices or whatever it might be. But like the digital health delta from a revenue perspective is kind of not there. So they haven't built the infrastructure to do it. And some nonprofits have. Crisis Text Line was essentially a startup. in many ways. They had a startup culture and they surpassed everybody and do amazing work. And they had a startup ethos. I tried to do that at the partnership as well. How do we build a startup ethos? We built our own helpline. We built our own infrastructure. We reached so many people because we were able to think about it like a startup. But one of the things that when you think about startups is the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty in being in a startup and trying to engage people and try to make money. Academics are focused on research. They don't want to go and think about onboarding and how to switch onboarding to increase engagement at X, Y, and Z level, particularly if you're focused on someone paying for it. So like that uncertainty and that, disruption and changing everything overnight is not built into the culture. So I think it makes it hard. That doesn't mean it's impossible though. And there's great researchers doing great work, and sometimes they're partnering with companies. So take this research, which many groups are doing, and take this research and now commercialize it. And I think that's where the magic can really happen.
From your early startup roles as well, like at Helicore, which happens to be one of the first digital health ventures, to actually your present work now, I guess what lessons have you learned about, product failure and perseverance in health tech?
Yeah, Helicore was an amazing experience. It's now over 20 years old, and it was a portable HRV biofeedback device. It was the first one ever. And we went in thinking, so I guess the first thing I'll say is this, is about the failures is knowing your audience on a deep, deep level. Know your product, know your audience, and know all of the barriers to getting to your audience. If we have done that in any company, whether it was that, whether it was after Helicore, it was a substance use continuing care text messaging company. It was in 2010. My audience was a B2B audience. People are like, are you like, there's no way I am sending my client a text message. One, because it was just not done really at the time. But the other is, hey, my client, this was a continuing care intervention after people left. I should have been going to insurers the whole time, working with them. But either way, but with Helicore, one of the things we learned was we were targeting like people who were into wellness and yoga. That wasn't our customer. Our customer were 70% men and engineers and people interested in seeing their heart rate variability wave go up and down. We didn't figure that out until later. And we had spent a lot of money before then. And then eventually Philips invested in us, but it was kind of too late until we realized. So I would say the most important thing about failure is it's going to happen, but there's certain things you can do at the outset, which is know your customer, know all the barriers to your customer engaging, know if you are a B2B or a B2C company or both, and the differences between that, because people have different incentives, and test, and also just accept it. You can fail. Like digital health does not make billionaires, the way other things, the biggest companies in digital health are the ones that are selling medication. That's not digital health. I don't consider digital health just being a platform to sell medication. That's just a platform to sell medication. Those are the companies worth the most. The companies that are actually focused on behavior change to do this, many of them are doing well. Sleepio, Big Health, all of these, don't get me wrong, it's possible, but it's a different journey.
I love that advice. And again, I guess for current and aspiring entrepreneurs in digital health, especially those maybe to hope that maybe want to reach high risk or marginalized populations, what do you wish you would known when you had started, and what advice would you offer now to them?
Yeah, we can be here for days on that. I would say the first thing is have an amazing team. Like if you are worried about your team, that is a bad sign. Focus on having, I am so blessed at Clear 30, not only in our advisors and the people we work with early, but my co-founders, Asher and Thatcher, are amazing. I've had a very rough year personally with a lot of family deaths and other things. They help me up. But more than that, we complement each other. We have content and marketing and social media and in-app engagement and development, CTO, chief product officer, and me as the chief clinical officer that my role in terms of combination of content, but also on the B2B side of raising non-dilutive funding. We just finished an SBIR. We just are looking at a new SBIR. We just had a Q submission meeting with FDA to build a digital therapeutic. That's my world. Everyone focusing on those roles. So number one is a team of complementary skills that you can, just riff off each other. Most important thing by far. The other is as I mentioned earlier, is know your audience. Knowing your audience and knowing what you're doing at the outset and being crystal clear that that is your audience and working with it and testing super, super, super early. Can't say enough about it. Like even with Clear 30 started because we saw so many people were not going to treatment. But what were people willing to do? Take a 30-day break. And then we realized people were trying to do after want to abstain or moderate or continue to break. And now our yearly subscriptions are more than our monthly because they see that there's yes, a 30-day break is a great start, but I want to keep doing that. I want to look at moderation. So really understand your audience. And then I guess the last thing I would say is from a digital health perspective, you kind of have to balance just running a business, but also the mission of helping people, right? And I would say if you get too focused on revenue, you're not only going to lose your own drive and motivation, but you're going to lose your customers. Because if you're focused on mission and outcomes, in the beginning, yes, you have to focus on revenue and get it. But if you shift and solely focus on what is going to help my customer, that's the best thing you could do from a revenue perspective because you're getting customers, satisfied customers. Never lose sight that your ultimate goal is to make people better, to make people healthier. And let's say we cure everybody of cannabis use disorder. Well, there's plenty of other things, gambling and porn that we could do. I'm not worried about helping too many people. There's plenty we can do. So, I mean, there's a lot more, but I don't know. I guess that's it. Yeah, for now.
Well, Fred, that is perfect and a good way to segue into the lightning round. So the lightning round, I'm going to ask you the first question. And my first question for you is, what's the most surprising insight you've learned about user engagement during your digital intervention research?
One is that I don't know what I don't know. You never know what someone's going to be attracted to. And there's been studies to show that if you have multiple features in an app, someone might go into groups, another person might do meditations, and they both get better. So thinking that about engagement and the perfect, tool for someone is you don't. So you're really offering a menu of options while still tunneling people and making sure, and this is the beauty of AI. The other is, I mentioned this but just timing and triggers matter. They matter a lot. Which is when you send someone a push alert or when something's on their phone in a widget or a text message, that is so powerful. One of the things we did, so we've done multiple studies in my academic career on text messaging. After we realized people weren't opening all of the links because we could figure out if someone opened a link and they still got better. And we're like, what's going on there? So we interviewed people. And they said, I love getting the message. And we said, but you didn't, or not you, but a lot of times people didn't open the message. Oh, I rarely opened the link. And we're like, so what it was? Just getting the message reminded me that I wanted to change my behavior. They didn't even read it. So being that source to trigger behavior change is not always what we think it is. We're not always this profound knowledge base that we're going to convey to a user. Sometimes it's really simple.
In one sentence, what's the greatest challenge facing digital health tools for substance use today?
I think just the power of substances and thinking that the digital tool is by itself going to solve everything. Well, Clear 30, we've put so much information in there, so many features to keep people engaged in the process. But at some point, people are going to have to exercise. They're going to have to drink water. They're going to have to go and surround themselves with other human beings who are seeking positivity and optimization if they're only hanging out with people who smoke all day. So making sure that the digital app is, like I said with AI, like kind of a Sherpa, which is it's a guide, it's a curator that's offering information, and it answers questions that people have when they're having, and then it allows them to do all of these other things. So I think thinking that behavior change is so isolated and in just an app is a problem. And we have to be curators and Sherpas and know that behavior change happens in so many different ways.
And my last question for you is, if you could change one public misconception about cannabis use overnight, what would it be?
Harmless and different from other substances. I think it's a treatment, but I think that's actually a smaller group. I think more largely is people are like, it's not so bad. Well, I can assure you, 100,000 people downloaded the app in the last year and a half. I can assure you those people, overwhelming majority, 18 to 25, like overwhelming majority using daily. Like 86% are using daily. I can assure you that it is not harmless, and people are struggling and they can't stop. And they have all of these things going on: depression, anxiety, CHS, digestion issues, all of these things happening. And people somehow think weed is harmless. They think it's better than other substances. The data suggests otherwise. Now, I will say this: smoking every once in a while is not a bad thing. It's daily use of high potency weed and regular use of high potency weed that's an issue. It's not harmless.
Well, Fred, thank you so much for your time, your thoughts, sharing your journey as well. I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience on your final thoughts?
It's just great to be here, and it's a journey. We're all trying to figure this out, and podcasts like yours where we're just sharing information is going to, lift all boats. And I've had such a good time at Clear 30, and I'm so excited for what the future is going to bring. I am so excited for what we're going to be able to achieve for the people who have the least resources and the least access to behavior change that we're going to be able to do with digital health. So thank you, and thank everybody who's in this fight.
Well, Fred, thank you again for your time and your thoughts. Where can people choose to connect with you if they choose to do so?
Yeah, so the easiest is clear30.org, www.clear30.org. Just go there. My address is fred@clear30.org. Go to me on LinkedIn. Love to connect. Please reach out if you want to test out the app. Most people listening are in the field. We'll figure out a way. We'll get you a code to test it out. Just reach out to me if you want to see what we're up to. And I love to just chat and
Okay. Well, Fred, thank you again for your time on the K in Clarity podcast.